Hurricane Florence is barreling toward the southeast coast of the United States and is causing quite an impact on energy prices. Let's get to Jackie DeAngelis, who's out in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, with the details. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Melissa, take a look at this gas station today. This morning, they had a full amount of gas. They are sold out now, and this is more typical of what you're going to see in Wilmington, North Carolina, as people are evacuating the state right now. Across the street, there is gas, but the lines have gotten much longer. People are making those final preparations to get out of town, and this is more than 2 days in advance of the storm. That's because the governors of North and South Carolina have declared a state of emergency, and in the coastal areas, there are emergency evacuations that are either in effect or will be going into effect. The impact on the energy industry, it's not about refineries, it's about the pipelines. They bring the gas up to the East Coast. If we get torrential downpours and the flooding that's expected from the storm surges coming with Florence, you could have potential delays in moving that gasoline around. That could raise prices. I want to give you the latest here because the storm is growing in size. This is according to the National Hurricane Service. They say that the storm is stretching over 340 miles across. It's so wide that there is a life-threatening storm surge that's being pushed 300 miles ahead of the eye. Some models are predicting 45 or more inches of rain in parts of North Carolina. And speaking of that eye, and NOAA tweeting out a photograph of it. I just want you to take a look at that really quickly. It's a really scary image, and the folks on the ground here are definitely intimidated by this storm. It could potentially be one of the worst that they've seen in 60 years. President Trump, very concerned about what's happening on the ground here as well, and he made some comments not long ago.
They haven't seen anything like what's coming at us in 25, 30 years, maybe ever. It's tremendously big and tremendously wet.
So this is being called a monster storm, and certainly every authority here, local and at the state level, saying it's better to be safe than sorry, and it's better to get out of the area before this storm makes landfall on Friday morning. Melissa.
All right, Jackie, thank you. Jackie DeAngelis in North Carolina for us. Well, our next guest says this is just the beginning of the energy rally, and there are 3 stocks that are worth a buy right now. Let's go off the charts with Chris Verrone of Strategas Research Partners. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Melissa. And yeah, I think there's a trade here within this energy sector. And let's keep in mind the backdrop is crude oil, if you look at Brent, is actually back at the highs. Crude's gone 70 to 80 over the last several weeks. So we brought along first the XLE here. And when we just look at the trend the last 2 years, what stands out to us is you quietly have these higher lows taking shape. 72, 73 is good support here near the 200. We think that holds, and we think you start to rally. So what stocks can we own if that's the backdrop? Let's start with a bombed out name. It's been bad, 60 all the way down to 35. It's Halliburton. But very quietly over the last several days, you reversed off the very important $35 level. You've held those levels. We think it's not out of the question that you can bounce back to the 200-day moving average. That's near 44, 45. So certainly a rally candidate there. Let's look at a better chart longer term. This is EOG, which much like the XLE, has come right back to the 200, but still very much in the context of this uptrend with higher lows. 113, 114, very good support. We think ultimately this one resumes trend and starts to make new highs. And then lastly, a big base taking shape here on Apache. I think importantly, the 50-day moving average recently crossed right above that 200. It's held the 200. We think decent entry point here, particularly with crude oil getting a bid here. These are 3 names, APA, Halliburton, EOG, that can be bought.
Why don't you come on over, Chris? Chris Verrone. He's going to join the desk here.
Guys, what do you think? Should Chris come over? What do you think? I
don't care what you think.
Apparently not. Those days are gone, BK. Long gone.
Do these 3 names work based on a particular chart of oil that you see? I mean, do oil prices have to remain stable in order for these charts to work?
I think lost in the discussion and the debate the last couple of weeks is Brent oil's gone 70 to 80 before we even knew about this storm, right? That this is not a storm story. There is a bid to oil here. I think the stocks have separated from that. I think that's a mistake, and I think the market's going to start to reflect that. Some of these beaten down names, the service stocks, bottomed on very big volume the last several days. Halliburton probably being the best example of that. There's a trade here to be had.
So I'm going to piggyback what you just said. So I think it's the value rush in overgrowth that we've seen in the last
couple of days or weeks, let's say, because I don't think it's a storm, because there's not going to be a supply disruption. There'll be a demand destruction at the end of the day. So do you think that tech is in trouble, and that's why you're seeing the bid in energy?
I think what's notable about tech, and we talked about this last week on the show, it's the social names that have been hit. The Ciscos have done just fine. The Qualcomms have done just fine. So there's a bit of a change in leadership within tech. When you look at the move towards value, industrials have been getting better for 12 weeks here. Across the board, Caterpillar has not made new lows. You've seen Emerson make new highs. We know the rails and the trains and the truckers act as well as they do. What I'm curious about, if this is a move more into value, does that gun lock thesis that we want to think about EM start to play out here a little bit? We can see that. And there were some notable reversals today. There was a reversal in Baba. There was a reversal in Baidu. Is that the start of something in the more value-oriented EM trade?
Quickly, getting back to the XLE, you mentioned it. So since, I don't know, middle of May, when it was trading close to 78, it's made a series of lower highs, lower lows in the XLE. So I look at it and say I'd rather buy it on a breakout maybe above 75 than to try to buck the trend here. Does that make sense?
I would ordinarily say yes. But given the strength in crude, I at least think you have to back away from short. So if you made money on the short side here in energy over the last 12 weeks, great trade. It was the right one. It's time to back away from that here, given the strength in crude.
Chris, thanks.
Thank you.
Chris Verrone of Strategas. Which one do you like?
I actually just like oil in general, but if I was going to go with an equity, it would be XOP, because I think that is a little more correlated to oil in general. I mean, I've been long oil all year long. What got me really bullish oil is when they said we were going to release some oil from the SPR, and oil went down and whoop, right back up. When any stock, commodity, anything goes up when it should go down, you got to be bullish.